The sting made her bite her cheek until she tasted copper. But he didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't ask her to apologize for the pain that leaked through her dress. "What's your name?" he asked. "Catherine," she lied, because lies are lighter to carry. He nodded like he heard the weight anyway. "Jacob." The cabin was simple. Table, cot, shelf of jars, a Bible left open as if someone had been reading it for courage. His rifle leaned by the door like a promise he intended to keep. "They're coming," she whispered. 3, maybe 4. They won't knock. He lifted the corner of a rug with his boot and pulled up a trapdoor. Cold, dark air rose from the cellar. "Down," he said. "If they try the back, the bell will sing." He pointed with his chin to a thin wire he had already tied across the fence. His voice stayed level. The steadiness of it was a blanket. "They'll burn the place," she said. "They always do." His eyes held hers. "Then we buy time and make them choose what hurts more, fire or truth." He pressed her hand tighter to her wound. "Breathe." Shaking hands still pulled triggers. She slid into the cellar. Dirt walls close. Floor cool against her knees. Through a slim seam between boards she saw his boots move, fast but never frantic. He tipped the table on its side for cover. He poured ground lantern glass across the sills, so anyone climbing in would bleed. He set a bucket by the door. He cut a small notch in the window frame and rested the rifle there like he'd done it before. Hooves slowed. Leather creaked. Men pulled breath through their teeth to talk quiet and nasty. The first knock landed like a hammer. "Evenin', rancher," a smooth voice called. "Elias Crow. I'll be brief. There's a ledger that belongs to the colonel and a girl who calls herself by names that don't belong to her. Hand both out and keep your roof." "No one here but me," Jacob said. Crow chuckled. "Then you won't mind if we look." "You crossed this sill without a warrant," Jacob answered, "and I count it as trespass." Trespass meets lead. Silence, then the soft spit of a match coming to life. A second scratch. The smell found her first, kerosene waking up like a mean dream. She pressed her mouth to her sleeve. Smoke already tried to crawl under the door. Her mind ran the map of this small room. The ledger wasn't in the cellar. It slept behind a loose brick near the stove. Names. Money. A whole crooked world written in ink. She pictured it like a heartbeat under the hearthstone. "Last call," Crow sang. 10 seconds. "Then I write my name in your ashes." Jacob didn't answer. He looked at the back fence, listening for the bell. He looked at the door, at the seams, at all the places fear might try to slip in. The match fell. Fire raced along the oil like it had been waiting. Orange licked the step and smiled. Jacob threw water and won a breath's worth of time. He set the empty bucket down like a chess piece that had already done its job. "Right side," he said softly. "Second man has the torch." His rifle spoke once, quick and sure. A shout split the yard. A horse reared and kicked sparks. The bell sang high and bright from behind the cabin. Another man trying to slip the back. Jacob didn't look rattled. He shifted, fired once more, and the bell's music turned into cursing and a body hitting dirt. Sarah's chest hurt from breathing smoke and holding still. Her fingers curled in dirt. She saw the brick as if she could reach it from here. She couldn't. But she could make a choice that could save a morning or save a town. She pushed up, teeth gritted against the ache, lifted the trap with her shoulder, and slid back into the room. Heat slapped. Smoke kissed her eyes. Jacob glanced once and shook his head. "No," he said. "Yes," she said, and pulled the brick free with her bloody fingers. The ledger fell into her hands. Cold leather. Heavy like a truth that wouldn't be buried. She shoved it under her shirt. Crow saw the shape move through the curtain gap. "There she is," he called, sugary again. "My brave girl. Hand me the book, and I'll let the gentleman live." Shame tried to climb her throat like a snake. She swallowed it whole and coughed smoke back up instead. Jacob stepped to the doorway with the ledger in one hand and the rifle in the other. He raised the book high. "You burn this house," he said, "and your boss's proof burns with it. Then you explain to men richer and meaner than you why there's nothing left to buy them silence." The youngest writer stared. His torch wobbled. He looked more boy than monster. Crow didn't blink. 5, he said. "Walk away," Jacob told the boy, calm as prayer. "Let your mama know you kept your name clean." The boy's mouth tightened. His torch dipped toward the snow. 4. Flame found fresh oil and rushed the porch. Boards crackled. Heat hammered. Smoke thickened into a wall that moved. 3. Sarah stepped into the doorway beside Jacob. She lifted both hands so the men could see she wasn't holding steel, only a spine. "Take me," she shouted, voice raw. "Lose the book. Start a war with every man in that ledger. Or let me ride to the sheriff, and some of you sleep at night again." The boy threw his torch down. It hissed and died. Another rider backed his horse away, eyes cutting to Crow for permission he didn't get. 2. Crow drew and leveled at Jacob's heart. Jacob's shot cracked first and ripped Crow's hat sideways. Crow's return shot went wild, slammed into a porch beam. Wood screamed. Floorboards gave. The world dropped under Jacob's boots. Sarah lunged, caught leather with the tips of her fingers. The ledger, not his hand first. And then his grip locked around her wrist, hot and iron-strong through the smoke. "I've got you," he said. Flame crawled fast. The porch leaned, groaned, chose. Outside, some men ran. One didn't. He lifted his gun and aimed for Sarah's back. "Don't," the boy yelled, voice breaking as he grabbed the man's arm. The muzzle flashed anyway. The gunshot cracked through the smoke like a whip, the sound punching the air from Sarah's chest. She flinched hard, expecting heat or pain, but it was Jacob who jerked, not from a bullet wound, from the sudden collapse of the porch beneath them. The beam gave way in a screaming splinter, sending both of them tumbling in a burst of sparks and smoke. They hit the dirt in a tangled heap. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. She scrambled up, coughing, clutching the ledger tight to her chest while Jacob rose to one knee, rifle already swinging toward the threat. The man who had fired was struggling against the boy, still gripping his arm. "Drop it!" the boy shouted, voice sharp now, no trace of the uncertainty it had carried minutes earlier. The man snarled, tried to wrench free, but the boy's grip was iron. Crow's remaining riders, faces smeared with soot, were already pulling back, their horses restless under the stench of fire. The flames roared louder, hungrily swallowing what was left of the porch. The heat made Sarah's eyes sting and her skin prickle, but she stayed close to Jacob as he stood, his body angled slightly in front of hers like a shield. Crow sat on his horse a few yards away, hat hanging loose on his head, eyes cold and calculating. He didn't speak right away. He just stared at the ledger in Sarah's arms. "You think you've won something?" Crow's voice was lower now, stripped of the false sweetness. "This isn't over. The colonel doesn't forgive, and he doesn't forget." Jacob didn't raise his voice. "Neither do I." He stepped forward just enough for Crow to feel it. "You had your chance to walk away." Crow's gaze flicked to the boy still holding the armed man. The boy's jaw was set like stone. That tiny betrayal seemed to tell Crow more than any words could. With a sharp tug on the reins, he turned his horse. "Mount up," he snapped. The armed man hesitated until Crow's eyes sliced through him, then yanked his arm free from the boy's grip and backed away. One by one, the riders followed, disappearing into the tree-line. Crow was the last to vanish, his silhouette shrinking into the smoky distance. The sudden quiet was deafening. Only the crackle of burning wood and the harsh rhythm of Sarah's breath remained. She turned to Jacob, searching his face for signs of pain. "You're hurt," she said, her hand brushing his arm. He shook his head. "Not bad." His eyes swept over her quickly, as if making sure the same could be said for her. "We can't stay here." She looked back at the cabin, or what was left of it. The roof had caved in, the walls bowed, smoke curling into the pale morning sky. The only home he had, and now it was a heap of blackened timber. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Jacob's gaze followed hers, but there was no bitterness in his voice. "Wooden nails can be replaced." "You can't." The words lodged in her chest, sharp and warm all at once. For a moment she couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but hold his eyes through the haze between them. Then the wind shifted, pushing more smoke toward them, and he touched her elbow. "Creek's that way. We wash up, then head to Red Hollow." She nodded, letting him guide her through the ash-dusted grass toward the sound of water. The creek was narrow but fast-moving, its surface glinting in the slanted morning light. Jacob crouched, scooped water over his face, then handed her the canteen. She drank deeply, the cold rushing down her throat like life itself. Her reflection wavered on the surface, pale, streaked with soot, eyes wider than she remembered them being. "Sheriff will need this," Jacob said, tapping the ledger. "And if he's like the rest?" she asked. "Then we find someone who's not." He looked at her, voice steady. "Law's only as good as the hands holding it." She felt the weight of the book under her arm, and the heavier weight of what it meant. That single object had driven her out of the only safe walls she'd had in months, had made her bleed, had nearly burned them alive. And yet, holding it now, she realized it wasn't just a record of debts and names. It was proof. Proof that her running had a purpose. They followed the creek until it bent toward a narrow trail, Jacob leading with the same quiet pace he had kept even under fire. When they reached his horse, he mounted first and offered her his hand. She hesitated only a second before taking it. He pulled her up behind him, her arms settling around his waist naturally this time, no stiffness in her grip. As they rode, the sun climbed higher, burning the frost off the grass. The trail opened into a wide view of the valley ahead, and in the far distance, the faint outline of Red Hollow came into view, a scatter of buildings under the endless sky. The wind carried the faint smell of wood smoke from somewhere far away, but this time it didn't smell like danger. It smelled like arrival. Sarah rested her cheek lightly against Jacob's back. "You didn't have to do this," she said, the words quiet but clear in the open air. He didn't turn his head. "You came to my door. That's all the reason I need." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the rhythm of the horse carry her forward. The danger wasn't over. Crow would be back, and so would the Colonel's reach. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, she wasn't moving just to get away from something. She was moving toward something. And maybe, just maybe, it could be hers to keep. The town of Red Hollow came into view like a painting slowly waking to life. The main street was nothing more than a wide strip of dirt, lined with weathered clapboard buildings whose peeling paint told stories older than the people inside them. A blacksmith's hammer rang somewhere down the lane. The saloon's swinging doors creaked as a man stepped out, tipping his hat to someone passing on the boardwalk. Children darted between wagons, chasing each other in bursts of laughter. It looked like a place untouched by what had happened that morning. Yet Sarah knew that in towns like this, news traveled faster than a rider at full gallop. Jacob slowed the horse in front of a squat brick building with a single star nailed to its door. "Sheriff's office," he said, swinging down and holding a hand for her. She dismounted stiffly, the ache in her side reminding her it was still there. He opened the door for her and followed her inside. The room smelled of coffee gone cold and oiled leather. A single desk sat in the center, papers stacked neatly on one side, a rifle leaning in the corner. Behind the desk stood the sheriff, tall, silver-mustached, with eyes that looked like they'd seen every kind of lie and learned how to measure them before the first word was spoken. "Barrett," the sheriff greeted, nodding to Jacob. His gaze shifted to Sarah, lingering just long enough to note the soot on her dress, the dried blood on her sleeve. "And you are?" "Sarah," she said. She stepped forward, unfastening the buttons at the top of her dress just enough to pull the ledger free. She set it on his desk like it was a loaded gun. "Every name. Every sum. Every deal your colonel made that he wouldn't want sunlight on. Crow came this morning to burn it, and me." The sheriff flipped open the book, his fingers brushing over the ink-stained pages. His eyes narrowed as he read a few lines. "You're certain these figures are real?" "I bled for them," she said, her voice steady. "You tell me if that's real enough." Jacob stood silent beside her, his presence a steady anchor. The sheriff closed the book and rested his palm on its worn cover. "You know, handing me this puts a price on your head higher than it already is." Sarah met his gaze without flinching. "That price has been there a long time. I'd rather it means something." The sheriff's jaw worked for a moment before he gave a slow nod. "Then you've just made my week a whole lot more interesting." Before she could reply, a shadow darkened the doorway. It was one of the younger riders from that morning, the boy who had thrown his torch into the snow. He stepped inside, hat in hand, eyes darting between her, Jacob, and the sheriff. "Crow's packing up," he blurted. "Headed south." Said something about the colonel's orders changing. The sheriff's mouth twitched in something close to a smile. "Looks like your message got through." Relief didn't hit Sarah all at once. It came slow, like sunlight melting frost, touching her shoulders, her chest, the corners of her mind where fear had rooted itself. But she didn't let herself relax completely. Orders could change again. Men like Crow didn't vanish, they waited. Jacob put a hand lightly on her back, guiding her outside. The afternoon light was warmer than she expected. Townsfolk went about their business, glancing at them with curiosity, but no hostility. She found herself breathing easier. "You going back?" she asked Jacob once they were clear of the office. "Not much left to go back to," he said. He glanced toward the low hills beyond town. "We'll find something." They stopped outside the general store, the scent of flour and dried tobacco drifting from its open door. Sarah hesitated, then turned to him. "When this is done, when Crow's gone for good, I'd like to find a place your bones recognize." His eyes met hers, steady and unreadable for a beat. Then he tipped his hat just slightly, the ghost of a smile touching his mouth. We'll build it together. Something in her loosened at that. Not just hope, but a kind of promise she could feel in her chest. The street around them was still dusty, the day still hot, but the weight she carried felt lighter. She had her name back. She had a man beside her who measured worth by heart, not history. And she had a fight worth seeing through. Jacob gestured toward the store. Let's get supplies. We've got ground to cover before dark. As they stepped inside, the bell over the door chimed, and for a brief, strange moment, it sounded almost like the bell on the back fence of his cabin. A warning once, but now just a memory. They left Red Hollow just as the sun began to slide toward the horizon, turning the edges of the sky gold and rose. The trail out of town wound between low hills and scattered stands of cottonwoods, their leaves whispering in the evening breeze. Sarah rode behind Jacob again, her arms resting lightly around his waist. Each hoofbeat felt steadier than the last, as if the earth itself was carrying them somewhere meant for them. They didn't speak much on the ride. They didn't need to. The silence between them was full, not empty, the kind of quiet that didn't demand to be filled. Somewhere behind them, the sheriff now held the ledger that had nearly gotten them killed. Ahead, the open land stretched wide and unbroken, a canvas waiting for whatever they would paint onto it. By the time they reached the small creek Jacob had mentioned earlier, the light had gone soft and low. He dismounted first, helping her down with a hand that lingered for just a moment before letting go. They let the horse drink while they knelt by the water's edge, splashing their faces, letting the coolness chase away the day's heat. This is good land, Jacob said, glancing at the rolling meadow beyond the creek. Not far from town. Plenty of water. Shelter from the wind. Sarah followed his gaze. She could picture it. A cabin standing where the grass swayed now, smoke curling from its chimney, a garden running along the fence line, the smell of coffee in the mornings. She could picture herself there too, not as someone hiding, but as someone belonging. You think we could make it ours? She asked quietly. Jacob didn't hesitate. If you want it, we'll make it ours. She looked at him then, at the set of his shoulders, the steady weight of his gaze, and something in her decided. The running was over. The starting over was beginning. They crossed the creek and rode up onto the ridge, the whole valley opening beneath them. From here, the horizon felt endless. She drew a long breath, tasting the cool night air, and for the first time in years, it didn't taste like escape. It tasted like home. Jacob reached over, covering her hand where it rested on the saddle horn. We'll have to work for it, he said. Every board, every nail. But it'll be ours. She smiled, small but certain. I'm not afraid of work. The last light of day spilled across the land, catching in her hair, turning the moment into something she knew she'd remember for the rest of her life. The fire, the ledger, the danger, all of it had led here, to this quiet promise. They turned toward the deeper hills, the trail ahead fading into shadows, and rode on. Somewhere in the dark, a night bird called, and the sound felt like a blessing. And dear viewers, if you've been riding this trail with us, don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Out here, the roads only get longer, the stakes higher, and every turn brings a story worth hearing. Stay with us, the journey's just begun.